Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, seems like good Dram shows are a bit like buses. You wait ages for one to turn up and then suddenly a whole load descend at once. But anyway, I'm sure you're not complaining about the frequency of episodes of the show this week. So anyway, on to today's tasting. Again, probably like I said the other day, I've got a number of tastings kind of backed up and waiting to go, and this is indeed one of them. And primarily the whole point of this episode of the show is to showcase a brand new independent bottling company called Claxton's. Claxton's have released 3 whiskies in their inaugural release. But as I said last week, 3 whiskies do not make an episode of the show. So I kind of scratched my head and thought, what would be a really nice idea is to do a comparative tasting of independent bottlings of against the 3 Claxton's releases. Not necessarily to see which one is better than the other, but just to see whether they had differences, similarities, that kind of thing. So anyway, like I said, this episode of the show is about Claxton's, and the company is fairly young. Was founded by, and I think it was Jack. I hope it was Jack, otherwise I'm in trouble. Jack and his son Adrian. I believe Jack was an accountant in the construction industry, I think it was, and just recently retired. Probably planned to do all those lovely things that you do when you retire. Put your feet up, bit of gardening, bit of fishing, that kind of thing, if that's your cup of tea. I think they were both pretty much into their whiskies, and obviously probably one evening while sort of having a dram or two, Adrian decided to pitch the idea of bottling their own whiskey, and obviously when you have no money, yes, you can pitch ideas, somebody has to pay for it, which is where Jack kind of came in. I'm guessing they've poured a fair amount of money into this business. I know how much casks of whiskey cost to buy, and then you have all the peripheral things of bottles and labels and etc. And one of the things that really sort of got to me about the Claxton's range is just the lovely bottles. Just lovely presentation, and they just look really, really good. But of course, at the end of the day, as we all know, packaging is pretty, so-so. It's what's actually in the bottle that counts. So you can have the nicest packaging, the most fanciest decanter, bottle, whatever. But if your whiskey inside is pretty grim, then it's not good. But we've all probably come across a few of those kind of bottlings. But anyway, so like I said, inaugural release of 3 single cask bottlings, all bottled at 48%. I did have a chat with Jack and asked the reason why, and it was partly to do with being a little bit different. Nobody else really bottling at 48%. Also, there's a duty element. You don't want to necessarily bottle at 40% because it just lacks the intensity. 46 is a good percentage, but so many other people do 46%. So yeah, why not 48 as long as it works? And I imagine they had some sampling sessions around the kitchen table to get the right ABV. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to be looking at these bottlings and tasting them against other independents. The other noticeable bottling you might not have actually heard of is another independent company, Caermory Whisky. Now, this has got a bit of an interesting tale to it. It all dates back to a company called the Spirit of 1992 PLC, which was set up as a kind of an investment company to buy casks of whiskey from Tobermory. You might have thought they might have gone for something a bit more, but no, Tobermory they decided to bought some casks. The company was, I believe, founded by three three gentlemen, one called Stuart Jowett, Derek Hewson, and this is where we get the link to last week's Aaron episode, one Harold Curry, who incidentally went on to found the Aaron distillery in 1993, the year later. So anyway, they bought these casks, they probably laid them down, and then some years later dissolved the whole company, sold off the casks, all the investors got their money, everybody was quite happy, and some of these casks have indeed found their way to Caermory, who are sort of slowly working their way through bottling them. So it will be interesting to see how that one fares with the Claxton's bottling of Tobermory. So, well, that's a little bit of waffle. So let's introduce today's little lineup then, shall we?
Red sky, the rain of day is over.
Right, okay, so we're going to kick off with Glentauchers. Really, really nice whisky. Tasted some lovely Glentauchers. So what we've got here, we've obviously got the Claxton's bottling, distilled in December of 1996, bottled this year. It is 18 years old, and I'm going to taste it against a 19-year-old. This was distilled in 1996 and bottled by Carn in their strictly limited range, bottled at 46%. Not a single cask bottling. It is a vatting of 2 casks. I think they made about 500 odd bottles. But as you can see, all American oak. So I don't need to continue to say that. Then we're going to look at the Tomatin that they've released, which was distilled in October of 1994, again bottled this year, aged 21 years old, and we're going to taste it against a 20-year-old Tomatin that was bottled by Douglas Laing in their old particular range. This was bottled at 46.8%, distilled at some stage in 1994, don't know exactly when, and bottled in August of 2014. So like I said, 20 years old. And finally we're going to move on to the Tobermory. Oh, lovely stuff, Tobermory, isn't it? Although in saying that, in fairness, I have been tasting, and I've been chatting about Tobermory to quite a few people within the trade, and the consensus of opinion seems to be that they've really actually cleaned their act up with regards to the quality of the spirit. And I've just been tasting some lovely younger Tobermory, which a few years ago those two words would not have actually been in the same sentence as each other, it has to be said. And you know, I guess that sort of, you know, distilleries are not immune to people saying things about their whisky, and if you know, and like I said, I'm not the only one that thought Tobermory was a little bit sort of fainty, a little bit sort of cardboardy. Maybe they've started to do something about it. I personally think it's probably adjustments of the cut points, but of course, any adjustment you make to your new make spirit, of course, it's going to take a number of years before it kind of trickles down and comes out. But I've been tasting some nice younger Tobermory, so you know, maybe they might not be a member of the Axis of Evil for too much longer, but we shall see. Anyway, waffling on a bit. So anyway, coming back to the Claxton's bottling, it was distilled in April of 1995, bottled again, like I said, this year, thus making it 20 years old. The bottling we'll be tasting against the Caermory, like I said, single cask bottling of 21-year-old Caermory, bottled at 48.2%, and the cask number was 238, for those of you that like to know these things. So anyway, that's this afternoon's little lineup, and hopefully the Claxton's bottlings will, you know, stand up pretty well to these ones. So time to kick off with the Glentauchers then. Okay, so Glentauchers. I love Glentauchers, to be honest with you. It's not a distillery that a lot of people seem to know about. I mean, maybe I'll probably do an episode of the show and go into more detail about the actual distillery in the future sometime. But suffice to say, it's a lovely spade, generally speaking, and it has an almost Highlandy kind of granity, hard kind of character. So it'd be interesting to see whether the Carn bottling displays that, shall we say. So anyway, let's see what those gives us. Very, very mineral, crisp, some lovely barley. Again, really, really granity and fresh and hard, but not hard in a industrial sense. It's just got this wonderful vibrancy, and it's certainly not a soft Speyside whiskey. It's certainly got some kind of some granity character to it, some real punch to it. Yes, there's a little bit of honey underneath. There's some barley notes, little herbal note coming through. Not a huge amount of oak. There's a little bit of buttery oak in the background, but I don't tend to find Glentauchers often displays a lot of oak. I mean, I'm guessing that maybe as a distillery, they probably use a lot of refilled casks rather than first fill. But it's got a lovely intensity, a real crispness to it. Yeah, like I said, it's quite a hard, sort of intense, almost Highland-esque kind of spey. So a little bit of juicy citrus coming through now. Lovely nose, really nice. Part. Oh, that's a hard finish again. Kind of opens up with a little bit more oak, a little bit more creamy, slightly toffeed oak. And in comes the barley, and in comes the minerality, and in comes the citrus, and it's like, oh, that's drying. Mouth-watering finale, absolutely gorgeous. But that passes. There's a little bit of honey. There's still some barley residue, a little bit of oak as well. That's a real wakey dram, it has to be said, you know. Breakfast dram, possibly. Not that I drink whiskey for breakfast, I hasten to add, but lovely intensity. Yeah, that is a really good whiskey. I like that. That's good. Right, well there you go. That's the benchmark set for the Claxton's bottling of Glentauchers. Let's see how it shapes up then, shall we? Again, it has a little bit of that hardness to it, that sort of granity character, but whoa, fruit, lots and lots of fruit, almost tropical, which is just like, I've never tasted Glentauchers that has tropical fruit. I mean, that's not the first thing that springs to mind when you think about Glentauchers. So it's got some lovely apricot, some orange, touch of satsuma, honey, broader oak, a bit more sort of toffeed oak coming through. Not so minerally now, but then, you know, with all that sort of bigger fruit kind of going on and that oak, it's kind of slightly pushed the sort of like the more granity, fresher kind of notes into the background. But you know, it's bloody good, I can tell you. Quite unusual by Glentaucher standards. Really nice. I mean, it has some citrus. It has the freshness right on the edge. Yeah, that's a superb whiskey. I mean, yeah, okay, it's not going to be cheap. I mean, I can't remember what I worked the prices out to be, but you're probably looking at around about sort of like 60 odd quid for the Carn, and about 70 odd quid for this one. But I mean, you know, cask strength, well, not necessarily cask strength, but independent bottlings of whiskey of over sort of 10 years old don't come cheap, it has to be said these days. Some lovely citrus to this, you know. Getting the granity notes kind of coming through now, that sort of wet stone thing. Just sort of once you give it a bit of time and a bit of aeration, that starts to come through a little bit more. But Lovely fruity nose. Palate. Completely different finish to the Carn bottling. Soft, juicy, quite a bit of oak in actual fact, sort of slightly toasty, slightly toffeed, really rich. Again, the fruit has not quite as much tropical character as the nose, but has a kind of subtropical kind of character. There's plenty of apricot, there's barley, there's honey, there's a little bit of straw. Has a little bit of sort of minerality kind of coming through right on the finish, a little bit of citrus as well, which kind of adds a sort of a freshening note to it, but it's really broad. It's just very, very unusual by Glentauchers standards, it has to be said, or certainly with regards to the Glentauchers bottlings that I've tasted in the past. Bloody good whiskey, that's all I can say. I mean, they picked up a really damn good cask there. I mean, that's absolutely wonderful, really, really nice. And moving on to the 20-year-old Tomatin, let's see what nose gives us on this end, shall we? Really nicely mature, or maturing, I should say. It's not quite sort of at that really old kind of phase. It's kind of somewhere in between, I suppose. There's some lovely sort of baked fruit. There's some citrus notes, some lime, some barley, some dried straw, some lovely soft oak, vanilla, a little bit of rose petal, a little bit of spice, a little bit of heather. Quite malty as well. You know, it's, you know, you tend to forget that sort of Tomatin can be quite a robust and malty spirit, and certainly I've noticed on a few sort of older bottlings of Tomatin that they do develop a sort of a lovely kind of oxidised baked fruit kind of character, which is great as long as there's something else going on, and this has definitely got lots of other things going on. It's got the oak, it's got the citrus, and like I said, a sort of little sort of heathery kind of scrubby kind of note kind of coming through. Oh, just lovely balance, lovely maturity. Yeah, really nice. Palate. Wow, that's lovely. Sugar-coated barley, granulated sugar, you know, lovely sweetness, but you know, balanced by that sort of soft alcohol, the citrus, touch of baked fruit again, sort of coming through on the mid palate. You know, it certainly doesn't taste 20 years old. It's kind of, you know, intermediate kind of age, I would guess. Lovely fresh finish. You know, the citrus kind of keeps going, and there's a little bit of barley sort of lingering. Slightly drying, but you know, nothing too out of sync. Just really nicely balanced. So yeah, that's a lovely bottling. That's good. And moving on to the Claxtons, let's see how this one stacks up against the Douglas Laing bottling then, shall we? Very similar in actual fact. Possibly a little bit more baked fruit, touch of earth, some slight coffee, again quite malty, rich, mature oak kind of coming through. Smells quite a bit older in actual fact than the Douglas Laing bottling. Not quite so much citrus, a little bit of tobacco smoke. Small barley, lovely maturity, really nice whiskey, and like I said, again has that wonderful, mature, baked fruit kind of character, but other aromas are kind of going on along with it, so it's not just a case of, yeah, that kind of smells old. There's a lot more going on here. Really, really nice. Touch of passion fruit, lime possibly. That kind of sort of, not quite tropical, but mature sort of, you know. Just bloody good. This is lovely. Really, really nice cask they've got. Palate. That's got quite a citric finish. Kicks off really dark and malty and treacly and herbal, and again lots and lots of baked fruit. It's got that lovely mature character, but still got a little bit of barley, a little bit of freshness, quite a lot of citrus certainly on the finish. A real vibrant finish. And that's the thing with some older whiskies, certainly, that develop that kind of baked kind of character. They can just taste baked, fruity, and old, you know, and you're just sort of thinking, yeah, okay, it's an old spirit, but it's a bit close to death, you know. But this one isn't. This one's still got some lovely liveliness to it, some intensity, you know, even some barley character still at this kind of age, and a lovely freshness, a really, really vibrant, juicy finish, you know. A little bit of honey on the aftertaste now, soft spice, a little bit of tobacco smoke. Really malty. Oh, that's a hearty dram, shall we say? Right, and finally, let's take a look at the Tobermory. So we'll kick off with the Caermory 21-year-old. Let's see what those give us then, shall we? Quite oily. It's got some lovely kind of almost violety notes. Some malt, a little bit of baked fruit. Nice, still got a bit of coastal freshness, not a huge amount. I'm guessing that once the casks were bought, they were probably shipped over to the mainland, because there's not a huge amount of saltiness. Some lovely sweet barley, bit of toffee. There's no cardboard, there's no kind of sweaty socks, there's no faintiness. You know, it is absolutely spot on. You know, it's a lovely, slightly coastally, mature malt. A little bit of toffee, a touch of dark chocolate possibly. Just a brief whiff of peat smoke. I mean, as you know, Tobermory isn't particularly, well, you know, the leche is their peated malt, shall we say. I mean, I'm guessing that sometimes there's a bit of residual peatiness kind of left over in the stills, even when they're distilling Tobermory, which is unpeated, which just kind of gives it that. A little bit of orange coming through now, a little bit of citrus. Really, really complex, which is just sort of like, you know, I mean, I remember tasting it the first time and I was thinking, oh, hello, old Tobermory, yeah, this is going to be near death, you know. But I was just blown away by it. I was just going, my God, Tobermory, you know, and I like it, you know, and I stock it, you know, and it's cheap. You know, it's a 21-year-old whiskey. What are we doing for? $69.95. I mean, you know, absolute steal. You know, and so, you know, if you actually like Tobermory and love it all out, you probably might not like this because it's not rough and ready. But you know, for a 21-year-old whiskey, it's sort of less than 70 quid. You know, how they do it? No idea. They obviously probably didn't pay. Well, they must have paid a reasonable amount for the casks, I'm guessing, but I'm probably making a real shoestring profit. But anyway, listen, coming back to the whiskey, good. Palate. wonderfully harmonious, lovely softness, touch of smoked meat, bit of smoke, barley, treacle, malt, quite malty in actual fact. Little bit of vanilla, some soft spice. That is absolutely fantastic. Lingers quite nicely, it has to be said. The sort of spices are kind of lingering there quite nicely with a little bit of smoke, a little bit of almost peatiness, but not quite. You know, earthiness maybe more than peat. I believe that the company kind of got His Majesty involved, Jim Murray, to taste all of these and decide which casks they release at which point. And obviously they've chosen pretty well as which ones to release, because this is just bloody amazing. You know, I mean, how many times do I use the words Tobermory, amazing in the same sentence? Worth buying, I think, just for that on its own. Right, okay, so moving on to the Claxton's bottling. It's got a bit to live up to, I think, after that one. So let's see what the nose gives us. Oily, more coastal, little faintiness to it. You know, this is Tobermory after all, but it's got loads of citrus and almost kind of orange and juicy clementine and a bit of herbalness and a little bit of peat smoke and fresh, you know, 20 odd years old, and it's got this kind of level of freshness. Again, maybe the cask probably came, you know, what has been matured on mull before the Claxtons bought it. A little bit of kind of almost kind of malt, not biscuits, kind of malt. I want to say shredded wheat, but it's not quite shredded wheat. But you kind of get where I'm going with that. It's not kind of sort of biscuity. It's more kind of cereally, malty. Yeah, I mean, it's got some distillery character, but you know, it's like I said on many occasions with these distilleries that, you know, are renowned for, should we say, an industrial style. As like, you know, as long as there's something else going on apart from the industrial characteristics, you know, they're really interesting. And although this isn't quite as clean, shall we say, as some other bottlings of Tobermory, it's still, you know, way above some of them I've tasted, to be honest with you. I mean, this is just kind of so in a different league. Lovely. Bit of coffee now. Palate. That's really quite peated by Tobermory standards. Lots of gritty coal dust, some spice, not of the cardboard variety, a bit of malt, quite a lot of salt on the finish, really sort of coastally, but really quite a lot of peat. I mean, I'm guessing, and this is just again a kind of wild stab in the dark, that maybe after they've distilled some peated spirit for leche, you know, that kind of peat kind of, I mean, although I imagine they do clean the stills, but I would have thought the kind of peat residue kind of sticks around in the pipes and things like that, and maybe the first distillation they do of unpeated Tobermory of a run after doing the peated malt just picks up a bit of the, you know, the sort of residual peat character that's kind of knocking around in the pipes and in the tanks and all that kind of stuff, because that has got a lot of peat for Tobermory, it has to be said, but lovely vibrancy, real intensity. I'm guessing, obviously, bottling at 48% has certainly sort of given it that kind of additional vibrancy and freshness. But another bloody good Tobermory. What is the world coming to? I think I'm going to go and have a long lie down in the darkened room and contemplate what's going on. And I don't know, to be honest with you, at the end of the day, maybe it's either end of the spectrum. Maybe, really old Tobermory, was a damn good spirit. Or maybe it's a case of, alright, so it's got a bit of faintiness, which, to be honest with you, it does have a little bit of faintiness still. But the maturity and the other kind of characteristics are all kind of, to a certain extent, offsetting that sort of slight kind of faintiness. And maybe it's the young Tobermory. Now they've cleaned up the cut points. And of course, we know that sort of like when you are distilling peated spirit, certainly the heavier oils and the heavier peaty notes come through almost towards the end of the distillation process. So there's that kind of point where you have to think, where do I take the cut? I don't want to get too much of the sort of sulfur rubber kind of compounds coming over, but I want to keep the sort of the intense peatiness. And that's the skill of a distiller at the end of the day, knowing where to take that and adjusting your cut points accordingly. But anyway, who'd be a distiller? And it's certainly not a job that I would want to do. I'm quite happy doing this bit of it, reviewing the final end product, shall we say. So anyway, right, that's this week's episode of the show. Time to wrap it up, I think. Right, okay, so like I said, the whole object of this episode of the show was to showcase the new bottlings from this new company called Claxton's. And, I will be stocking them, it has to be said, so they certainly get my seal of approval, which, I don't know what that one's worth, but, for what it's worth, I'm kind of sticking nailing my colours to the mast and saying they have bottled and selected some bloody good casks. Incidentally, it's quite nice. I got an email from I think it was Adrian a few days ago saying these are the ones we're planning to do next. What do you think? And it's kind of quite nice to sort of have an independent bottling company basically coming to you and saying, as a retailer, what do you think? Which ones are going to be sort of interesting for the general public and all that kind of stuff. And it's nice to sort of obviously give a bit of feedback, to the bottling company, because we don't work in a bubble. We kind of have to sell these kind of things, and we know what people are interested in. But anyway, I'm kind of digressing again. Coming back to this afternoon's tasting, Claxton's have bottled some bloody good whiskey, and I really think that if you love good whiskey, then get yourself a bottle of them, because they are very, very good. The Glentauchers was, going through them, shall we say. I mean, again, like coming back, Carn are bottling some lovely, lovely whiskies. I've tasted quite a number of them now, and they're kind of really getting geared into this and sort of, coming around, with samples every whatever. And the Glentauchers, lovely, lovely whiskey. Really, really liked it. Loved the Claxtons. I mean, tropical fruit Glentauchers. Yeah, you've got to taste it. That's all I can say. The two bottlings of Tomatin, Tomatin. Just displaying that lovely sort of mature old baked fruit kind of character, but with other complex elements coming through as well, the citrus, the alcohol, that kind of thing. So really, really nicely balanced. Either of those two bottlings, absolutely fantastic. And the Tobermory, well, I'm stocking both of these bottlings, so that's got to mean something, And I'm probably have been as critical of Tobermory as probably anybody has been. So for me to actually want to stock these bottlings, I think that's I think that pretty much says it all, I hope. So anyway, that's this week's episode of the show. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you'll either go online at some stage and purchase one of these wonderful bottlings of Claxton's whiskies from us, or phone us up, or drop into the shop, or whatever, because I think that they should be supported in this. You know, it's cost probably a lot of money to get this product out to market. They've done a wonderful job with the packaging and the cask selection, and you can't ask any more than that, in my opinion. So yeah. Buy one of these bottlings, because I say they're good. Right, anyway, that's enough of that. So that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. I hope you enjoyed it. So all there's left to say is, go get yourself a bottle of Tobermory.
It's gone forever, long ago, lost in the rise that shine with mystery. Lost